There are a lot of things in 2022 that make me sad. Things like polar bears being nearly extinct, ice caps melting, and maybe most importantly, the fact that there are no lightweight, small, inexpensive sports cars left. You basically have this car and the Mazda Miata. That's it. Now, the previous generation of this car was extremely fun to drive. Heck, I even owned one for a little while. But what did they do in 2022 to update this thing and make it more relevant? Well, we're gonna find out today. We're gonna take a look outside, inside. I'm gonna try and cram a bike in the back of this thing. And then most importantly, we're gonna take it for a spin and see what it's like on the road. How's it going, everyone? My name is Kurt, and welcome to another episode of Eat, Sleep, Drive. Now, the big headlines for this car, as everyone knows at this point, is the bigger engine. It now has 2.4 liters instead of 2 liters, and subsequently, it makes more horsepower and torque, basically everywhere. 228 horsepower to be exact, and 184 pound-feet of torque. And as you'll find out when we go on the ride, it makes a huge difference in a car that weighs this little. Let's start first with the exterior, which of course is extremely subjective. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Of course, it looks like a BRZ. It doesn't look like a huge departure from the last generation model, although they have updated some of the styling cues, and I think it looks better. It does have more vents, and some of which are functional, like the vent on the side that starts from the wheel well. And they've clearly tried to work on some aero with this car. So overall, I would say it looks like sort of a smaller Lexus RCF, something along those lines, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Now, 18-inch wheels wrapped in Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tires. That's a departure from the notorious Prius tires that were on the last generation model. Now, you can still get this car with lesser tier tires, if you want to call it that, and it does kind of make the car more fun, but this is slightly more serious with a stickier tire, and now that it has more power, it's sort of welcomed. Coming around to the back is really where they've departed more from the previous model. These taillights and sort of trunk configuration look completely different than the last generation, and I think they're better off for it. These taillights look so much better than the first gen cars, and you still have the traditional dual exhaust that the old cars had as well, but otherwise still the same great shape. I get a lot of hate mail whenever I try and stick a bike in the back of a small sports car. People say, "It's not designed for that, blah, 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 blah." And you know what? That's not really the point. I know it's not designed for that. It's just a point of reference, and honestly, it's just for fun. So if you enjoy this kind of stuff, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Aha! Even though I had to remove the front tire from the bike, I'm still really impressed that it fit, and it took me just over 2 minutes to do for the first time. Let's take a look on the interior. The biggest changes I noticed right away when I get in this car are mainly the steering wheel and gauge cluster. Gauge cluster has gone away with a traditional analog gauge cluster like you got in the last generation, and now it's all digital. The way it changes modes when you go into different track or sport settings is kind of interesting. The rev counter can go horizontal or it can stay as a dial. And I guess it does spice things up and bring it a little more into the 2022 time period. The last generation car had a really simple steering wheel, which in a certain way was kind of refreshing and focused on just the driving. Well, this car has kind of brought it up into modern standards, and there's more controls with it, more menu buttons, more knobs and doodads, but it's not terribly distracting, and overall I do like the feel of the steering wheel. One of the things many manufacturers have been doing away with are physical buttons, but I am extremely happy to report that there are plenty of physical buttons still in this cabin, certainly to do with HVAC. You still have a volume knob, you still have a tuning knob, and there are some buttons on the side of this touchscreen here which will get you to shortcutted places, so that's nice. You don't always have to interact with the screen. And of course, now these screens have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, so you're really just, kind of interacting with those interfaces and not so much from the Subaru interface itself. The limited model gets heated seats, and you also get some accents on some of the interior. So up here, you have an Alcantara type material, which sort of spruces up the door card a little bit. It's soft touch over here where you would rest your arm. The seats seem similar to the last gen model, but do seem slightly more supportive. Unfortunately, they don't have lumbar support, which is something I really like to have, but they are extremely supportive in the side bolsters and hip bolsters, and they have a really nice feel to them. There's sort of a Alcantara type material going on here. And of course, most importantly, this car has the manual transmission, which the shifter linkage has been slightly revised, so we'll be curious to see what that's like out on the road. But what is it like to drive? That's really what we want to know. Let's take it for a spin and find out. Time for a drive. No continuity in my outfit, sorry guys. But even though my lack of continuity in my outfit is bringing this video down, what is not bringing this video down is this car and this engine. There's a couple things that are interesting about this engine outside of just the increased power, which is very much welcomed in the BRZ. Everyone has been asking for that forever. But the way it delivers power is so much different than the previous generation car. I had a lot of qualms with the tuning of the previous gen car. It was just kind of all over the place. It would like randomly pull timing. There was this horrible torque dip at around 3,500 to 4,000 RPM. So even though it was fun to ring out and made okay enough power to make that car still fun, it just it needed a lot of improvement. And fortunately, they have done that with the 22 version. It's just so much more consistent with the way it delivers power. And it also doesn't have that heinous torque dip, which frankly almost ruined the driving experience of that car. You could kind of drive around it, but man, when you were daily driving, you were constantly dealing with that stupid torque dip. And it feels completely gone in this car. Now, whether the dyno graph or not will indicate that is a whole nother thing. But I can just tell you from the driver's seat, it feels completely gone. And it feels so much faster than the previous version, like by a long shot. I owned a 2013, and you know, when they dyno those cars, they make like 140 horsepower at the wheels. That's the difference between crank horsepower and wheel horsepower. And plus also it seemed like that car was just kind of not making the advertised power anyway. So when they said that this car was 15% faster because, you know, it has 228 horsepower instead of 200, it's about 15%. You're just like, okay, but I really wanted it to be turbocharged. I really wanted it to be kind of more significant. But boy, was I wrong, because even though it only makes 15% more power, it feels way more than 15% faster. This car is a major improvement over the last one with this engine. It's incredible what almost half a liter of displacement will do when you're only working with 2 liters to begin with. The torque is there for you. And I noticed it a lot just driving around town, especially on the highway. The last car, every time you wanted to pass somebody on the highway, you had to downshift, because if you put your foot down, just nothing happens. But in this car, you can get away with not downshifting. You know, doing 70 miles an hour, put your foot down. It has enough torque to get you going. It's not a turbocharged engine. Let's not get carried away. It doesn't whiz you by people, but it is more sufficient than the previous gen model. So yeah, I mean, to no one's surprise, the engine is the best part about this new model, but I guess ultimately what I'm trying to get at is I underestimated just how good or how much it would improve this car. Because on paper it seems like it would decently, but it really improves it significantly. Now this transmission, great combo. 6-speed manual, thank God they're still making it. I drove the automatic version, did not love that. Unless you have something that literally prevents you from owning a manual, you just get the 6-speed. This experience is so much better with the 6-speed. The shifts, nice and short, very positive, always know what gear I'm in. I had some qualms with the last shifter in my 2013, not this one. It was like sometimes you could miss second to third for some reason. There was something weird going on with the linkage. Not this car. It's not the most refined shifter experience, but you don't expect that for $30,000. You know, you don't expect Porsche shifter feel or shifter refinement more so. This is completely functionally good. The chassis, it's so good. They've increased the rigidity of this chassis, and you can definitely feel it. I notice it most kind of going up and down embankments or kind of drainage dishes. The car teeter-totters like you would expect. I had a S13 that had a cage in it, and you know those cars are wet noodles, and then I put a cage in it, and it was like, oh, all of a sudden it would kind of do that tipping thing that they do when they're super stiff, so that you feel the stiffness in this car. And it's just so composed. They did some tweaking of the suspension, and I'll say that it feels similar in how flat it corners to the last model, but the biggest improvement I see is more in ride refinement. The last car was very crashy over bumps. At least my 2013 was. And this is just so much more composed. I mean, we're on a road that has some unevenness and undulations, and I'm not getting bucked off at all. The car just stays in contact with the ground. There are not many cars. I mean, you can get a supercar. I don't care what it is. There are not many cars that can keep up with this car on a back road. It's just the right size. It has the perfect amount of power for the chassis on a tight road like this. Okay, garbage truck out of the way. Yeah, I think what I'm getting at with the size is that this is a very tight road. And despite that, I still have room within my own lane to move around a bit. That's what you want in a sports car. That's why you want them to be small. So you can have fun in tighter places. Yeah, I'm telling you, it would be so hard to find a car. Like, this will keep up with anything on this road. Now, what are some of the things that I don't love about it? Well, there's kind of two. The first is the fact that the steering is incredibly direct, incredibly quick to turn in, but it just doesn't have that feel that the last gen model does. And I know some people get annoyed when journalists talk about steering feel. Steering feel, what is that? Maybe you care, maybe you don't. But when you get in and out of a lot of cars, it becomes much more readily apparent. And I just think that it leads to a little more confidence when you have more steering feel, because you know exactly what those front tires are doing. In this car, it's okay, but it's not great. The last car had great steering feel. This car has okay steering feel. The quickness is still there, the turn-in is still there, the directness is still there. So we're not like throwing it all out. But it is a bit of a bummer that they revised this system and it's slightly worse. They revised the EPS system and it is slightly worse. Other than that, let me drop down a gear again, maybe 2, because it's fun. I don't know if it comes through in the video, but my other complaint is the noise that they are faking with this engine. I put a little sound clip before the driving portion of what this sounds like from the outside, just the exhaust. And you know what? It doesn't really sound bad. It's pretty quiet, but it doesn't really sound bad. I was surprised though when I listened to that, because it's the first time I'd heard the car from the outside, and it sounds so much different inside because they have this like weird electronic sound coming from the speakers, and it's so buzzy. It's really, really annoying, in fact, and I've looked through the menu system. I can't find a way to remove it. If there is a way, leave a comment below. I'm sure somebody will tell me. And I'm sure, yes, of course, like somebody will be able to get in here with some tuning software or pull a fuse or something, and you can get rid of that. But the fact that you can't turn it off from the factory is really annoying me. It's just like this annoying sound. I don't know how else to describe it. It's not a good sound. And if you're gonna make fake engine noises, I guess I feel like they could have done a better job. But these are minor gripes. This car is so much better with this new engine. I've looked at prices. I really miss my 2013 FRS that I had. You know, same thing. FRS BRZ, same thing. And I've looked at prices for the older ones, and they've really, they fell off in value for a while. I paid next to nothing for mine, but they've really gone up in value, like most sports cars during the pandemic. And when I look at the values, and I look at this, and if you can get this for close to MSRP, which is a big kind of question right now given the car market, man, it would be a tough sell to make me like buy the previous gen car over this car, even at a little bit of a discount. I would just say, if you're considering doing that, just try and save up a little bit more, or see if you can make this work, because it is improved in pretty much every way. Like I said, I do have those two qualms. The sound thing, the last one wasn't exactly a good sounding vehicle either. In fact, quite bad as well, so that's kind of a wash. The steering feel is really the only thing, but this engine just makes up for that like tenfold. It really transforms this car. And if you are in the market for something like this, I say go for it. The value is incredible. At $30,000, the value is incredible. It's more usable than a Miata. I think it's more fun to drive than a Miata. Miatas are kind of a little more wallowy, a little more soft, which has its own merits, but man, this car, bravo to Subaru, bravo to Toyota. I'm glad they brought this back for another generation. I thought they were going to kill it off. And please buy it. Please buy it with a manual, so these cars stay around and the manual transmission stays around. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Eat, Sleep, Drive TV on Instagram. I've just thoroughly enjoyed this, and if you've made it this far in the video, I really, really appreciate it. Consider hitting that subscribe button if you did, and we will see you on the next one. Peace.